Now that we know how to create a new material and apply a color to that material, let's discuss how we can apply a material to multiple objects and vice versa, apply multiple materials to a single object. If, for example, we create a certain material, such as gold material for a certain object, but then inside our 3D scene we have dozens of other objects which have gold material also, it doesn't make any sense and very inconvenient to create gold material for each of the object in the scene one by one from scratch. In Blender or in any 3D software such as 3ds Max, Maya, or even Unity game engine, 3D objects and materials are treated as different entities. So we can apply one material to many objects in the scene. Let's say we create another object, a UV sphere in here. Notice it doesn't have any material as it is a newly created object. Let's say we want to use the existing gold material we created before. To do that, instead of clicking this new button in here, click this small button at the left side. Notice Blender will list all of the existing materials in the scene. We have the gold material and our very first material, which is plastic.white material. Let's pick the gold material in here. Now as we can see, we have two objects using the same material. Notice if we select this monkey object and tweak this gold material, let's say changing the color to blue for example, not only this monkey head object has changed, but also this sphere. So this is something you need to keep in mind. Changing material will change the look of every object associated with that material. Okay, so what if we want to have multiple materials inside one object? We can do this by preparing multiple material slots and assign faces to them in edit mode. Let's see how we can do this. Let's create a new object, click in here, then Shift A and choose a cylinder for now. Okay, now in the material panel, instead of clicking this new material button, click this new material slot button, which is this button up here. Notice we created a new slot, but we still have no material inside it. If we want to have two materials for this cylinder, we can click this plus button again. Now we have two material slots. Click the first one, which is the top one, and then down here, click the material browser or material list, and then choose gold. Notice any material you put at the first slot will be applied to the whole object by default. Okay, now let's pick the second slot. Then choose plastic.white material. As we can see, nothing has changed on our cylinder. For the second material slot onward, we need to specify which polygons or faces assigned to that slot in the edit mode. So press Tab to go to edit mode, go to face mode, and then pick this face up here. Then make sure we are in the second slot. Click this assign button in here. Now we have this face up here using the material in the second slot. Okay, one thing I need to stress out here is that this face up here is assigned to this slot, not to this plastic white material. Huge difference here. Notice if I change this plastic white material to the gold material for example, we will have two gold materials now, and the top face will change to the gold material also. So again, picking faces and then using this assign button will assign the face to the slot and not to the material itself. You can then later change the material to any material you want. Let me change this back to the plastic white material for now. We can also create a new material for selected faces using the methods we already discussed. I believe you already understand this by now, but let me just show you to make things more clear. Let's say I want these two faces to have blue colored material. We can select this one, hold Shift, and select this one. Then create a new material slot. Now click this new button. Rename this new material to, for example, metal.blue. Change the color to blue. And the last step, don't forget to click the assign button in here. Now these two faces are blue, based on the third material we have just created. Sometimes we need to create a new material, but the new material will be closely resembling an existing material. Instead of making the material from scratch, we can duplicate the existing material, rename it, and make some small changes. To see how we can do this, let me create a new object in the scene. Let's say a torus. We want this torus to have a plastic look but with green color. Before, we already have a material called plastic.white, which is the material for this box in here. Just assume that we already make some parameter changes on this material that make it looks like a real plastic. Now we want this material also for the torus, but with green color. To do this, first select the torus object again, then in the material panel, click on this material list button, then choose plastic.white from the list. Now if we change the color in here to green, this will change the color on the box also, because essentially they are both now using the same material. In our case, this is not what we want. To duplicate this material to a new material, we can click on this plus button. Notice Blender will create a new material based on the plastic.white material and name it plastic.white.001. We can rename the material to plastic.green, for example, then change the diffuse color to green. If we click on the material list again, we can see in this scene we have two plastic material, plastic.white and plastic.green. So that is how you duplicate material. After creating and experimenting with materials, you may end up with so many materials that you never use. For example, let's say I change my mind. I want this torus to have a new metal material with red color. We can go back to the material panel and click the list, then choose metal.blue, then duplicate. Rename it to metal.red. And change the color to red. But then we change our mind again. We want a new wood material for this torus. To create a complete new material, not duplicating from previous material, we can click on this X button to remove the existing material. Then click New. Rename it to wood. Let's give the material a brown diffuse color. Now if we click on the material list, we can see that Blender actually keep all of these materials we created before. Even there is no 3D objects associated to them. We still have the plastic.green and the metal.red material in the memory. But notice something different about these unused materials. They all have a 0 number in front of their names. Now this is very important for you to remember. These 0 numbers mean that this material does not associated to any object in the scene. In Blender, objects that are using the materials are called users of that material. So these materials are called 0 user materials. When you save your Blender file and then exit, and if later you open your Blender file again, all of these 0 user materials will get purged or removed. So to recap, if somebody asks you, how can we remove a material in Blender? Well, the answer is we cannot remove it directly. What we can do though is to make it a 0 user material by not assigning the material at all to any object in the scene. Then Blender will remove that material when we start a new session. Okay, until this point, you might start thinking, what if I have a 0 user material that I like and I want to keep it? I mean, for example, let's say we've created this plastic.green material before, which is now a 0 user material. If we know that we will use this material later for another object, it's just that we haven't created that object yet, and it's already past our bedtime. We just want to save the file and take a rest and continue the work in the morning. What we can do to save this material is to assign a fake user to this material. To do that, we can select the material first temporarily on any object's material panel. In this case, the plastic.green material. Then notice in here we have this F letter button. Click on this button to assign it a fake user. Then we can switch the material of this object back to its original material. Notice when we click on the material list, we now have this material's name preceded with the F letter, which basically stands for fake user. In this condition, if you save the file, close, and reopen Blender, Blender will not purge that material.